Grace to you and peace from God our Father and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. Why are you here? Or why did you bother showing up today at this place, at this time, on this day? I'm sure there are plenty of different reasons why different people show up to church on Sunday morning. Some of them might not be so noble. Maybe you showed up today because your parents made you and you had no choice. Maybe you showed up today because your kid is being baptized. Maybe you showed up today because you're going to be a member of this congregation and it would be a little bit awkward if you were a no-show. Maybe you showed up today because you would feel guilty if you didn't. Maybe you showed up today because you knew I would notice if you weren't here. Maybe you showed up today because this is just what you do. You've gotten into the habit and the routine of going to a Sunday morning worship service on Sunday morning each week. There are plenty of different reasons that people come to church, and some of them might not be so noble. But I would hope that there are some noble reasons as well, some purely Christian reasons why you would want to go to church on Sunday morning. In fact, I would hope that every one of us in this room today is coming to church on this Sunday morning for at least this reason. We want to see Jesus. We want to see Jesus, don't we? We want to see what Jesus says to us. We want to see what Jesus does for us. We want to see what Jesus promises us. We want to see what Jesus tells us and commands us and instructs us about our daily life. We want to see Jesus. And Jesus wants us to see Him. Jesus wants us to see Him preaching and teaching. He wants us to see Him performing miracles and casting out demons. He wants us to see Him do what He does and be who He is. Not just because He wants attention. But He wants you to see Him because He wants you to believe in Him. He doesn't just want you to see Him on a Sunday morning, of course. He wants you and me and everyone else to see Him every day as we delve into His Word. And He wants everyone to see Him in this world all the time. And so you would think that when some travelers from Greece come over to the disciple Philip and they say, "We would like to see Jesus," Jesus will be thrilled to hear that. "Yeah, bring them on over." You can almost imagine Jesus saying, especially foreigners, people who are not Jewish people from a long way away. What an incredible opportunity to share with them the good news about their salvation so that they can take it back home and share it with their own nation. But that's not what happened. When these Greek travelers come to Philip and say, "We would like to see Jesus," Jesus doesn't say what you would expect Him to say. In fact, Jesus almost acts as if He does not want these people to see Him at all. At least, not them. At least not at that moment. I'm going to read through that story one more time. It's in your bulletin, John chapter 12. You can follow along if you would like. Notice how peculiar Jesus' answer sounds. Now there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the feast. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, with a request. "Sir," they said, "we would like to see Jesus." Philip went to tell Andrew. Andrew and Philip in turn told Jesus. Jesus replied, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. I tell you the truth. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. The man who loves his life will lose it, while the man who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant also will be. My Father will honor the one who serves me. Now my heart is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came from heaven, I have glorified it, and will glorify it again. The crowd that was there and heard it said it had thundered. Others said an angel had spoken to him. Jesus said, this voice was for your benefit, not mine. Now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. But I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself. He said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. Peculiar, isn't it? Why would Jesus say that? Was Jesus ignoring these Greek travelers? Was he rushing them off? Wouldn't he care? Apparently there is a trend going around lately for female celebrities to take selfies makeup free. I don't really care. But celebrities, actresses, models, they do have a certain look that they present to the public on a regular basis, an appearance that is supposed to bring out their best features so that when the tape is rolling and the cameras are clicking and the phones are on, they look their best. And so when they take these selfies, these pictures of themselves, makeup free, it does give their fans a little bit of an insight into what they look like without the mask, without the glitter, without the cover-up. It might not be the best look, but at least it's real. Isn't that what Jesus is doing here? He wanted these Greek travelers to see him. But he didn't want these Greek travelers to see him preaching to thousands of people. He didn't want these Greek travelers seeing him healing hundreds of sick people. He didn't want these Greek travelers seeing him worshipped by hordes of his disciples. He wanted these Greek travelers to see him makeup free. And where were they going to have a chance to see that? Well, Jesus tells us right at the end of the section. Did you catch it? And I, when I am lifted up from this earth, will draw all men, all people, to myself. And then John, who's writing this, gives this editorial comment right at the end. He said this to indicate what kind of death he was going to die. Jesus spoke these words the week he was going to be crucified. And so that means just 2 or 3 days after he spoke these words, he would be lifted up onto a cross outside the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and that is where he would draw all people to himself. That is where these Greek travelers would be able to see Jesus. That is where all of Jesus' disciples would be able to look at his face. That is where all people of all time would be able to gaze upon the Son of God on the cross in the middle of death, makeup free. Why would he do that? It doesn't seem to make sense. When you meet someone for the first time, when you know you're going to be standing up in front of a group of people, you at least comb your hair if you have hair. If you're a woman, you put makeup on. You clothe yourself in something appropriate, not Jesus. Jesus wanted to be on the cross. That's where he wanted people to see him. He wanted it that way. He wasn't looking forward to the torture, of course, but he wanted people to see him on the cross. He said, my heart is troubled. But what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this very reason I came to this hour. That is one of the most incredible character traits that Jesus expresses when he's on this earth. He knew what was coming. sacrifice he was going to have to perform. He understood the horror and the torture that was just in front of him. Of course his heart was troubled. Of course his heart was beating faster the closer and closer that event got. What human heart wouldn't? But he doesn't shy away. He doesn't try to get out of it. He doesn't ask his Father to take it away from him, and at least know what Jesus says. It is for this very reason I came to this hour. So that he could hang on the cross. And everyone could see him. Make up free. We have an incredible Lord. An incredible Lord who wants to make sure we see him exactly as he is. Listen one more time to these words that should put a chill down your spine. Now is the time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. But I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself. He said this to show the kind of death he was going to die. This is what Jesus wanted. This is what Jesus needed, not for himself, but for you and for me and for all people. He wanted us to see him on the cross. He does not want us to just remember him as a cute, cuddly baby in a manger. He does not want us to just think of him as a smart 12-year-old in the temple. He does not want us to just think of him as a powerful preacher and an interesting teacher and an incredible miracle worker and a fervent prayer and a loving Lord, even though he was all those things and more. What he really wants is for us to see him with bruises all over his face. What he really wants is for us to see him with gashes covering his back. He wants us to see him with puncture wounds in his head, in his side, in his hands, and his feet. He wants us to see him with cuts, and scrapes, and abrasions, and gouges all over his body. He wants us to see him bleed a lot. He wants us to see him hurt a lot. He wants us to see him punished a lot. He wants us to see him at his most vulnerable, at his weakest, at his worst. And when we see him, he does not want us to look away. Do not look away from his battered face and his tattered body. Do not avert your eyes from this sickening scene, because he is not just hanging on that cross for you, he's actually hanging on that cross because of you. It's your sinfulness that put him up there. It's my sinfulness that is the very reason why Jesus had to shoulder so much physical and emotional and psychological and spiritual distress. In fact, if it weren't for me, if it weren't for everything that I've done, everything that I've said, everything that I've thought, everything that I am, Jesus would not have nearly gone through as much. That's appalling to me. It makes my stomach turn to think that Jesus had to do that because of me. Jesus had to go through that because of me. Jesus had to feel all that because of me. I dare not look away at the cross now. I can never look away at the cross when I'm responsible for it, when I'm to blame. But I do look away from the cross. We all look away from the cross, don't we? Oh, we might glance at it every now and then, especially on a Sunday morning in a worship service when it's right in front of our faces. But Jesus' cross is rarely in the forefront of our mind every day. It's too familiar. We know the story. We're used to it being there. Yes, we believe in it, but let's move on. No. We cannot just move on. We cannot shift our focus somewhere else. We cannot do anything but look on the face of Christ as he hung on that cross. And we do so without blinking because we do not want to miss a thing. And Jesus on the cross is certainly the result of the Jewish hatred of this man and the Roman cruelty and the wrath of God the Father over all sin of all time. But Jesus on the cross is the most beautiful sight you will ever see. Jesus on the cross is where our sins are forever drowned in His blood. Jesus on the cross is where our guilt is hammered to a couple pieces of wood. Jesus on the cross is where our death dies with His. Jesus on the cross is the pinnacle of our salvation because that is in the exact time, in the exact place, and in the exact reason we're forgiven. Jesus on the cross. Nothing more beautiful. And yet nothing more ugly at the same time. Nothing more extraordinary. Nothing more disgusting. Nothing more gruesome. Nothing more wonderful. That's where Jesus wants to see you. That's why we're here today. But that's why we showed up on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. so we could see Jesus. We don't know if those Greek travelers ever saw Jesus. We don't know if they ever made their way outside the walls of the city of Jerusalem on that Friday afternoon and were able to look at Christ. I hope they did. I hope they were able to make it out there so that they could look upon their Savior as He was earning their salvation. They wanted to see Jesus after all, and this is the way Jesus wanted them to see Him, whether they wanted to or not. And we want to see Jesus too, don't we? But usually when we say we want to see Jesus, that means we want to see Jesus in heaven, glorified, majestic, perfect, surrounded by His angels, sitting on His throne while we're in heaven as well. One day we will. One day everyone who believes that Jesus as their Savior will. But before that day comes, we get to see Him right here. Right now. We get to see Jesus at His best. Because Jesus on the cross is Jesus as loving as He gets, as compassionate as He gets, as merciful as He gets, as human as He gets, as divine as He gets. There is nothing else to see. There is nothing else to do. There is nothing else to think about. There is nothing else that matters but to see Jesus, your Savior, on the cross.